Mm.
Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Mary Ann Petrie. You can find me on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. You can find my books that are available on Amazon and dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. They are Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth, and Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children. Feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. And I am so happy to have a brand new guest, attorney Christine Miller. She's from Louisville, Kentucky. And you can find her on TikTok at Kentucky Christine, where she explains what's going on in the legal field. And we're going to talk about parenting coordinators, guardian ad litems, and other third-party parasites that plague the so-called justice system. And we've got a lot to talk about, so I totally welcome you, Attorney Christine Miller. How are you?
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today.
Finally, we meet.
Right. Which is so interesting because how we came to be, I don't know if you remember, but 2 years ago, I posted something on LinkedIn about the TikTok judge. And
Uh,
for all the listeners, we have a TikTok judge that does a lot of makeup and selfie reports herself on the bench. But you were like, I'm following this person. And so we sort of connected. I wasn't quite at the point where I was ready to talk about the system.
uh-huh.
But the straw that really broke the camel's back is the fact that I was sitting at home on Super Bowl and I saw that this judge, Denise Brown, she's the former judge, chief judge of Louisville.
A
She
nightmare.
well, there is a Facebook group called Surviving the Nightmare, Denise Brown.
Mhm.
But I will not comment on that specifically. But she literally was selfie recording herself during a domestic violence hearing with what seemed to be pro se litigants. They did not have knowledge. She uploaded that to TikTok and then literally hashtagged their trauma, hashtag domestic violence. And I reached out to several judges. I thought, surely this is enough.
Right.
Surely she's gone too far. And it was crickets. And quite frankly, I just figured if she can TikTok, I can TikTok. So I started doing TikToks about what's really happening, talking about the problems in family court, and it really took off. It was about 3 months ago, 3.5 months ago. And so I appreciate the support. I have gotten so much love from the community. I want to be clear, like as a former divorce attorney, there is so much that we don't know that's going on because a lot of this stuff is happening with pro se litigants or on dockets that I might not have been on. Like we have a dependency, neglect, and abuse docket, which is completely confidential. And I did not go there, or I went there very, very infrequently and
Oh.
only when it was associated with a divorce. But when you're in it day to day, you don't see a lot of the issues. But once you get that bird's eye view, and it's been 2 years since I was in family court, probably individually, and you get that bird's eye view, and you start talking to other people, and it's just wild what family court is doing. Absolutely wild.
Mhm. Yeah, these are rogue judges that are running the law as they see fit. I mean, I know of a judge that it actually made the newspaper that she stated, "I don't have to follow the Constitution." And she yelled at an attorney. I don't know, I just really and I know we've talked, but I just think family court should be abolished and just take it to civil. Do something quick.
You know, it's an interesting conversation that I'm open to. I mean, I am concerned about how we make the transition because there certainly is a need. Like, certainly, there are abusive parents, there are children in danger, there are parents that are doing negative things, and we need to have a court for them. But
Mhm.
I do think when you have a system that really doesn't have any checks and balances, it's really problematic. So, like, family court was started in Louisville in 91 or 92. It was a pilot program, and they say like it's a nationally recognized program. But we all know that government agencies are prone to corruption if there's no oversight. Like that is not a new concept, right? Like never
Right.
in the history of the universe have we had something that was unchecked that was like, oh, it's working out fair and equitable.
Yeah.
I do wonder if jury trials would really help, even if it was a unique, like 6-person jury trial. I mean, I understand the expense, but look at the Colorado case, right? So this is a case in Colorado, and I wasn't there, but there was a $21 million verdict. Mom sued dad for defamation. Dad made allegations that mom's new fiance was sexually abusing the children, went
Mm.
to criminal court, and, you know, the criminal court was like, whoa, 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 this didn't happen. You know what I mean? They dismissed everything.
Mhm.
But in her divorce, she's got a, equivalent of a guardian ad litem or a parenting coordinator or a custodial evaluator, all of these things that we have, and she's still not seen her children. So a
Right.
jury found dad clearly lied,
Ugh.
and the family court is like, no, you know what I mean? You need to say your fiance abused these children. You're the one that's not taking responsibility for what happened. It's just radical that something like that is going on.
Well,
And I, oh, sorry.
no, you go ahead.
I think that Rule 6 in Kentucky, and that is the rule that allows these judges to appoint anyone, frankly, they see fit, but custodial evaluators, parenting coordinators, guardian ad litems, friends of the court, um, co-parenting counseling, therapists, all of this stuff. And they're appointing these people and giving them quasi-judicial immunity and quasi-judicial authority. And then they're forcing the parents to pay for it,
Ugh.
which it is the judge's responsibility in family court as it sits to ultimately make these decisions, right?
Mhm.
So they can delegate, hey, I don't want to make this decision because maybe I want to do selfie recordings on TikToks or I want to do makeup. So you have these parents paying $6,500 for a custodial evaluation that literally, Marianne, takes sometimes 2 years.
Oh my God.
And it's just, it doesn't, if it's not working, and the system has gotten increasingly more problematic since
Mhm.
COVID.
Mhm.
Once those judges, in my opinion, realized that they could work remote or they could delegate all this stuff, it just opened the floodgates,
Mhm. I think they
But
got lazy.
I just think so. In Kentucky, we elect our judges, and I know that you've had someone on that was dealing with Derwin Webb, and like if you look at Derwin Webb, and I think is set to be the next chief judge. Don't quote me for sure
Oh,
on that. So, but he literally sits on like 7, 8, 9, 10 boards. He was just appointed by our governor to be on a juvenile justice board, which certainly that board in particular, I believe, meets during the working hours. He has a podcast. He is notorious for taking a significant period of time to make decisions. So, you know, you do podcasts. This is a time consuming job, right?
uh-huh.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
it's only
can't
me, right?
you can't sit on the bench, you know, from 9 to 5. He also constantly posts photos of him at school, visiting children, hashtag I love my job, which
Yeah.
to me, quite frankly, is propaganda. You know,
Oh,
pictures of children are meant to disarm you.
and he carries a red gavel. That I find extremely creepy.
Really? I did not
I
know that.
I saw a picture of him holding his red gavel, and I thought, I mean, my stomach turned, I'll be honest with you, because if you've been through any type of court, criminal otherwise, if you see something like that, that's a symbol.
Hmm. Which, how
Oh,
sad is that is so triggering for some people. And I mean, another reason I started doing this is I literally could not go anywhere in the community without, like, once they found out I was a former divorce attorney, they're like, oh my gosh, you got to hear about this. Can you believe that? Can you believe this? And it's like, yes, I can. And
mhm.
I think it's so important. I still have not really figured out the best way to articulate the fact that a lot of this family court is very crazy making, right? Like it will make you crazy. You're talking about people's children, you're talking about their property. And so people that haven't experienced it, when you have a friend or a family member, it's like you're not going to believe what's going on in my divorce case or my custody case. It almost seems unbelievable
Mhm.
because there's no way a judge would do that, right? There's no way a system would order these kinds of things. There's no way. It has to be you. And there's not the empathy there because it's just so people do not understand. And so I urge everyone that has a friend or family member that is going through a divorce to, one, be compassionate, understand that this is happening all over the country. There is a massive movement all over the world. There's a massive movement in Australia, in London. We got Susan Bassey out of California just like breaking it all down. I mean, she is a badass, like
Mhm.
absolute badass. We've got the Colorado case. There's a massive movement, and I want people to understand it can happen to you. It
Oh, yeah.
absolutely can happen to you.
Yeah. I never thought this would happen to me either. I just wanted a happy family, and we co-parented, like I told you, for practically 10 years, and all hell broke loose when I remarried.
Which is
So
just the judge, any person, you don't need a law degree to see what the problem is if you've been
right.
co-parenting for 10 years, right?
Right, right, and the nurse for almost 23 years suddenly goes batshit crazy.
And it, these. and this is what I'll say, there's like the one moms movement, the parental alienation movement, we've got the mother's rights movement, we've got the father's rights movement. And I want to be clear, I have seen scenarios of all of those things, right? I
Mhm.
have literally seen narcissistic individual say that mom is crazy and do make mom crazy. You know what I mean? And just continue with abusive behaviors through litigation. I have also seen legitimate parental alienation, like
Right,
legitimate.
right.
And you know, I understand the notion that that work, like maybe it started out in a way for lawyers to make money or for abusive people to target moms,
Mhm.
but the reality is it's happening to both sexes. This is
Right.
not a I have seen fathers be screwed. I've seen mothers be
Mhm.
screwed. I
Mhm.
have seen it's almost as though judges just the first decision they make, they follow the whole case.
Right, right. It seems well, what I've seen is, like, as soon as the opposing opens their mouth and says, "Okay, he or she's crazy," or he or she's alienating the kids, then the judge runs with it. I mean, like, I myself was cleared of 2 false indications of emotional abuse by the CPS judge, but the family court judge completely ignored that and still considered me an abuser. And that's what these judges are doing to everybody.
They don't have the ability to understand that they could get it wrong. I think that's a fundamental problem. Like we all do, right? I mean, we all can hear some evidence. Like I have seen affidavits that I'm like, I've read affidavits when they file a motion and I'm like, oh my word, what did my client do? And then I call my client up and I tell them, and it's like extraordinarily histrionic. There may be a nugget of truth in there. And it's written obviously by an attorney who's very good, a wordsmith.
Mhm.
Um, but the judge reads that and is like, holy, you know what I mean? I've got to do something. And so that's what I mean by like, once there is an allegation made, the judge almost just is like, well, this has to be true because
Mhm.
no one would ever make it up. When we know people make things up all the time.
Mhm.
It's like Cat Williams says, I don't know why liars lie, but they do. And people will lie to get an advantage in court. This has been happening since the history of time, you
Mhm.
know?
And to destroy the other parent, I mean, they may of course, there's money involved, we all know there's money involved, but they also have that other ulterior motive where they want to destroy completely that other parent.
Absolutely. You left me, you know, I will have control over you until as long as I can. And I would see very, you know, when in my practice, if someone was willing to spend, you know, $5,000 to fight about something that's worth three, it's like, what are
Mhm.
you doing here? Like, I understand the principle and I understand I've been divorced. I understand that you're emotional, but I think our
Oh, yeah.
responsibility as divorce attorneys is to de escalate a situation. It
Mhm.
is a court of equity. You know, I used to tell people that I represented, listen, if y'all want to redo my kitchen, by all means, like I need it, but you're much better putting this money in a 529 account. And not by any means that I'm a saint. You know, obviously I had to make a living. But it gets to a point where since I started doing this, I have noticed a lot of people saying like all attorneys are bad or it's just a money making machine. And I do think people are right for a small percentage of attorneys, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of us out there that just are constantly talking about the fact, like you said, the judge that said, I don't have to follow the Constitution and yelled at the attorney. I mean, these judges, when you walk into court, sometimes, I mean, I have seen family court judges storm off the bench, slam things. You know, I was a public defender for 4 years in Eastern Kentucky. So
Mhm.
we're dealing with, I've seen, you know, murder trials and murder cases, sex abuse of children, I mean, horrific things. And
Mhm.
these defendants were always treated with respect by the judge, you know, because it's the United States of America, not Venezuela. We don't
Mhm.
just make a decision and go with it. You know, I mean, there is procedure and people are entitled to respect. Now, obviously, people need to go to prison. And quite frankly, there are people that need to lose their children. There are children that are in unsafe environments and the parents can't adequately care for them. But you don't get to demean or be mean to a person going through that if you're a judge. That's
Right,
not the role,
right,
right?
right, and these judges, some of them just don't wanna listen to motions. They can have motion court, but they just don't wanna listen to it, or they make some excuses why they don't wanna listen to it. They're not doing their jobs, like you said, there's no oversight, there's no accountability, forget that. And I was gonna ask you, how I think, in my opinion, there's like way too many female judges. I've noticed this talking to parents. I don't know what you see.
So it's an interesting question. Obviously, I am, pro female. I ran for judge, but now in Louisville, we have 36 judges. We have 10 family court judges. We do not have a straight white male on the bench. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying we have 8 women and we have 2 men. One a black man and one a openly gay man. I mean, he's very comfortable. He ran on hashtag, gay dad. And then we have a breakout, like 50% white, 50% black of female judges. So, I've gotten some comments about like, oh, you're only talking about female judges or you're only talking about black judges. And it's like, y'all, I'm happy to talk about anyone that's doing something that I think is inappropriate or recover a case, but we have predominantly female judges in Louisville. They just win elections. Like in district court in Louisville, there are 16 judges. There is one male, one.
Mm.
So, it's a difficult topic because you don't want to disparage women, but also we have to be held accountable as women to the same standard we would hold a man. So if I would call out a man for doing something, why can't I call out a woman for doing it? And quite frankly, this is a common conversation amongst female attorneys that never in the history when we were growing up, and by the growing up, I mean like young baby lawyers, was I fearful that like a male judge was going to like be mad at me. And there are female judges that you have to walk on eggshells. You have, like Denise Brown, for example. It is extraordinarily, she is extraordinarily, in my opinion, retaliatory. She interrupts. If she thinks anyone in the courtroom is smarter than her, she will immediately attack. I got a piece of advice once because I was like, I had some difficulties with her. That's not a secret. But this male attorney told me, you have to go in there and be like, you know what, Judge, I was thinking that, but then I sort of remembered there was the Constitution and I thought maybe this, and just kind of like, get her going that way, which is so bizarre to me because what should
Yeah.
happen is you file a motion, this side goes, and the judge follows the law within reason. I mean, no one is expecting perfection, right? That is unrealistic. But this is a level of just extraordinary. I can't even articulate it properly. How it's the wild, wild west.
Most definitely. They don't look at evidence. Even my one judge, she didn't look at evidence at all. Even when I argued at Superior Court on the child support matter, the first words out of the female judge, who she just came up and said, "Why aren't you paying your child support?" And it's like, "Bitch, I just gave you a reproduced record and a brief, and I gave it to all of yous, and how come no one's reading this?" And you could see why, I was caused to lose my job. I mean, they're not putting it together. I mean, I just can't believe she came up and just addressed me so nasty and unprofessionally in Superior Court.
Right. I mean, you should, if you're in family court, you should 100% not expect your judge to have read everything. And a lot of times, like you'll have, and some of the attorneys that are really into high billable hours, they'll file motions that are like 15 pages long or with, 15 different exhibits. You want to keep it short, sweet, to the point. But I would say, it's extremely common that the judges have not read the motion, or like, you may be going on in a motion for like exclusive use of a residence, no disparaging comments. And the judge may say, oh, we're on for this because that's like literally in the title when they open the file, but they haven't read. They haven't read anything that goes along with it. There's just this automatic assumption, which doesn't happen in criminal court. It's very bizarre. Like you said, for child support, why would I be appealing a decision to come in and talk about something I should be talking at the trial court level about? And there are legal issues. I mean, calculating child support is a legal issue. The courts can get it wrong, but I think that's a common occurrence. I mean, frankly, I am of the mindset, I think the judges have lost their privilege to have not have a time card. Like, I think they should have to stamp in at 8:30 and stamp out at 4:30. I understand that there is some level that they need to be out in the community occasionally, but we have 36 judges. Okay. They could all, they could take a week and each go to a school for a week. It's just, they are, who knows? It is 9:30 on a Thursday, 36 judges. I can't imagine that there's more than 15 there. And they're all making over $100,000. And
Well,
I mean, I'm speculating.
mhm. Well, that one judge I mentioned about the Constitution, she made the news again because she would cancel people's hearings and go have her hair and nails done. And she was reprimanded, but again, that was not enough.
When some of these judges are canceling court, you do wonder, like if it's a big hearing and then there's something, but court is canceled frequently. I mean, these judges are if you look at, we have a website, it's a Jefferson County Family Court, and these judges thought this was like a prolific thing. They thought, I have like reinvented the wheel. Like, we're going to make a website where people can get information, like i.e. Zoom meetings, which is obvious. But if you look at that, they all upload their weekly docket. I mean, court is often canceled on a Friday, or it says no court, which these judges do need time to write orders. I'm not saying that, but then why are we waiting 6 months, 8 months, for a hearing or for an order?
Right.
It's abnormal. Like, it's June, if you were to file for divorce today and have even minor conflict, I'm talking minor, maybe 2 motions, you need a hearing, you go to 1 mediation, and it doesn't work out, you're looking at probably getting a hearing in 2025 and maybe a ruling, by June of next year, maybe. And this
Right.
is minor conflict, y'all. If you actually have high conflict, you're talking 4 years. That is
Oh, right, right. And the line I hear frequently that attorneys tell their clients, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. That's encouraging.
yeah. I mean, it is, as attorneys, we have an absolute duty to tell our clients the truth. I mean, I'm very blunt. Like, the makeup TikTok judge, it's like, I would trust her to do my makeup. And you've seen some of them. I mean, and if you want to wear too much eyeliner, this is America. You should be able to wear too much eyeliner. But
Yes.
I would
Such
trust.
as myself.
No, you
Sorry.
look great. You have seen her TikToks. I mean,
Yeah,
it
I'm
is.
taking some notes.
Oh my goodness,
No,
that's
no, I'm not.
hysterical. But I would trust her to do my makeup before I would trust her to make any decision about my family. I mean, and I'm brutally honest. And when you go to mediate these mediations, a lot of the mediators will tell you the same. Now, one thing that I have found in Louisville that is very problematic to me is the fact. So we started in 91 or 92. We had a bunch of judges that retired in 2014. Now, one of my first cases, and I had been a public defender, so I had been used to, conflict, I mean, with prosecutors. Like, no, there was a lot of prosecutors that I respected and still have great relationships, but I was used to conflict in the courtroom, I guess.
Mhm, mhm.
And me and opposing counsel had agreed to a mediator. This is an extremely well-known mediator, great human being. And the judge was like, well, I think you should use retired judge, Jerry Bowles. And it was so shocking because I know my client. One, like you said, these judges haven't read anything. I know my client. She knows her client. We know who would be the best fit to mediate this. We know who we work with the best. And I just thought that was so bizarre. And so
Mm,
that's where you get to where some of these people that make these allegations about this being like a money making machine,
mhm.
but they are appointing their friends, and it should be a neutral issue. Also, it feels a certain kind of way. These judges all interact, they all talk, they are their own, you know, upper echelon, right? And
Mhm.
so it's a different power dynamic. Now, there are some, and I don't want to disparage all judges because there are judges that are very concerned about what's happening. There are prior judges that are very concerned about the state of the union or the state of
Right.
family court. But in if they don't speak up about it publicly like I am, and you don't have to use satire like I do or be as sarcastic as I do, but
Mm,
there has to be some level of accountability because the reality is we're all talking about it, right?
right.
It's just, but they're getting away with this behavior because no one is holding them to account. No one is calling them out. It's like, well, they were elected,
Mhm.
which another problem. I mean, you can't get good people on the bench because you can't run against an incumbent. Like, we have our TikTok judge that literally is doing, frankly, commercials from TikTok, utilizing the bench as a background. And if you haven't been to family court, that resonates. And they're keep judge so and so, keep judge so and so. That's name recognition. And on top of that, if you run against a sitting incumbent, talk about rallying the troops, they'll all come for you,
Mhm. Mhm.
and you got to protect your clients.
Right. It's hard to do
Hmm.
when there is such collusion. And going back to this TikTok judge, I also noticed that um, she was being paid for advertising a certain makeup,
I
something
mean,
like that,
it says a
sponsoring it.
beauty content creator. She does unboxings. You know, to me, if I'm watching something on TikTok and someone's doing an unboxing, typically they're either a paid influencer or attempting to be a paid influencer. She constantly is endorsing products. I mean, I I can't imagine a situation in which a judge should have a part-time job or a
Mm,
side hustle. Now, certainly it could be beneficial for a judge to like teach an adjunct class at a college. You know, I could see where that would be beneficial. And so our rule allows for stuff like that, but I think it's very problematic that you're getting sponsorship. Also, you have to think like these judges are creating all these
mhm.
potential conflicts. So they're going out in the community and they are, toasting with these people. What if these people come before them in court? Like, I'm not saying the judges should completely isolate themselves, but like if you look at, Derwin or Denise out there constantly, quote unquote, campaigning, even though there's no election, or on the boards of these individuals, people that they get divorced. So then they come before the judge and it feels wrong, right? You don't want to go get divorced and then find out 2 years later that your judge sat on a board with your ex-husband, you know?
Yep. That's that's it, and I don't know. I know that I did see a, post by Susan Bassey where she was outside of some type of venue where the judges were having some type of party, and she was questioning one of them had come out, it was a woman, like a blonde woman, and she was questioning her, and apparently this was also funded partially by the taxpayer. And taxpayers need to I'm so glad Susan Bassey is around, she's doing this stuff because the taxpayer needs to wake up.
Yes. Now, I do think there is something to be said about the fact that like some of these judges and attorneys like socializing minimally. Like obviously, we need to know each other. One of the problems is in COVID, they just isolated all of us. Like
Mhm,
so, all of us attorneys, we didn't know what was happening to the other attorney.
mhm.
But yes, the Susan Bassey is extremely problematic, like the secret club. Well, like look in Louisville, we have Behind the Black Robe created by Derwin Webb that bring community leaders into court, and the community leaders are the media. Like, so then that to me leads them to plant good stories, favorable stories. It's impossible for me to believe that we could have 10 family court judges in 10 years that haven't done something negative that needs to be written about. I mean, just 10 elected officials. Statistically, it seems improbable or impossible. Um, but yes, I do think it's hard. A lot of questions I get on TikTok are like, how come attorneys can be friends? Or, do you guys go to happy hour? And the answer is we do. But now, that being said, I've done the same thing with prosecutors. And we have literally tried, felony cases against each other and gone at it because
Mhm.
there's just an ethical line. Like you want your attorney to have some level of relationship. Otherwise, that's how you get these high billable hours because they never resolve anything. But the Susan Bassey, where they have like a secret club funded by the taxpayers. And the interesting part about her story too is it was literally in the front of the building was the law school graduation. And the judges didn't care enough to go and be like, hey, new lawyers, like so excited. They just wanted to socialize in the back.
Mm. Yeah,
Crazy.
I just think, I know there should just be new judges coming in that their funds are being donated to their campaigns, but not from lawyers.
Absolutely. No, that I fundamentally agree with. When you look at the cost of what some of these judges spend on a campaign, we're talking people will spend six figures on a campaign to get a job that pays six figures.
Mhm.
But yes, I absolutely agree. Now, I personally have donated to judicial campaigns. Ironically enough, donated to Derwin Webb years ago. But it's fundamentally wrong. The rule needs to be changed. It's the appearance of a conflict. I would never want to go to court if my, liberty interest were in jeopardy. I would never want to find out that the other side had donated to the judge or that the other attorney had donated to the judge. It's absolutely wrong. Fundamentally needs to be changed. I understand attorneys have a First Amendment right, but in Kentucky, our standard for a conflict is appearance of a conflict. If there is an appearance of a conflict, it's enough. And I think it's absolutely gotten completely out of control. I agree wholeheartedly.
And also, parents are telling me, out of Louisville, Kentucky, that they have presented evidence to Judge Denise Brown, who just disregarded it. Just disregarded it. And this is the life of a child we're talking about. And I guess she doesn't care. She's more concerned about makeup.
My ethics require me to, be careful in what I say about sitting judges. But I have absolutely personally been before her and realized that she has not read what it is that I'm talking about.
Right.
Like, for example, there was one case that it was like 6 pages or something, and I had 2 or 3 exhibits. I don't quote me on that. But I was like, Judge, this is on page 4. And so when she was scrolling through, there was like a typo. My paralegal had put like 4-4, and so she was like, I'm looking at this page 4. And I was like, oh, I see that typo, Judge. Sorry, it's the next page. But it was a horrific domestic violence case. If she had read it before, she would have come out and been like, oh my goodness. And then when she was looking at it, she was basically like, holy, this is bad. Like, I've got a cover face. So yeah, of course I read it. But clearly, in my opinion, she had not. And I think, you recently had one of my old clients on, which is what a small world, right?
Right. Yeah, Mr. Rick Henry.
Yes, and Rick is it's a wild case, and Rick has given me absolute permission. This is ironic for so many reasons because actually he was making TikToks about what was happening in his case, and someone tagged me in it, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's Mr. Henry. So he said you can absolutely talk about my case. In 2020 or 2021, I absorbed another practice, and that's when I acquired Mr. Henry. And I also absorbed this paralegal. This paralegal was an extraordinary human being. Mr. Henry was emphatic. My child's in danger. My child's in danger. My child's in danger. And there really wasn't enough quote unquote evidence to, file any sort of motion. He was, anything like that. And I'm sitting at my kitchen table and I get a call because we're all remote at this time. We're not in court or very rarely in the office. And the child had been shot by mom. Mom had covered it up. She was charged criminally for this kind of behavior. I think she was charged with intimidating a witness in a legal proceeding, wanton endangerment. The allegation was that she failed to get treatment for this child. She told the child to tell the court that you fell off of or tell the police that you fell off of a bicycle. Mr. Henry, we got custody. We did everything. There was obviously a confidential docket, which has been discussed on the circuit docket. So I can say that. But the circuit docket is public record. So he was supposed to be getting child support. He had her. Things were turning around. Mom was going through her criminal case and other cases. And then I wrapped up my practice. And I just cannot believe that, as attorneys, we have cases that stay with us for a long time. And that's one of them because he was so emphatic and then he was right. He was right. And it's not just like the child got shot. Like that is horrific in and of itself. But any parent that would tell their child to lie and not seek medical treatment for being shot, I can't imagine a universe in which that parent should ever have unsupervised parenting time.
Ever again.
And you don't want to I understand the notion that that's still mom, but it would need to be supervised and it would need to be supervised by a professional. Like there are times where professionals should be, involved in the system, but not at all like the way we use them. They are handing out GALs and FOCs. And do you know the difference?
Okay, guardian ad litem, that is an attorney for the child. FOC, is that like friend of the court or something? Oh,
Yeah, it is. But actually, you could have a case where they're both children for the attorney. I mean, attorneys for the children. So you could have a case where you have a guardian ad litem that is representing the child's best interest, billing $200 an hour, and you could have a friend of the court billing $200 an hour, $250 an hour, that is representing the child's best interest, but is an investigator for the court. So your children could have two lawyers on the payroll, including your lawyer. The other party's got a lawyer. You've got mediators, you've got a parenting coordinator, you've got a custodial evaluator, you've got co-parenting counseling, you've got play therapy, just wild.
right. And I luckily avoided that in my case because I saw it kind of go in this way. And it's like, what do I have to pay for this lawyer? Because, I was at the point of going pro se because my lawyer was getting trampled on by the family court male judge. And so what I did was I found out who were the guardian ad litems in the city. So I went to each and every one of them for a consult and just going on about my case, real nonchalant, like, what do I do? And yeah. And so they would be very kind and say, no, you know what? Your case is so far gone. I'm not even going to charge you for the consultation. And so I said, okay. And so I made contact with them. So we weren't able to use any of them.
So, and that is going to be, we have some of these pro se litigants that are killing it, like Mr. Henry. If you watch him in court, you think he went to law school.
Right.
Because they get so frustrated with the system and
Mhm.
it's their life. So it's very different.
Right.
Like I used to tell people at mediation or when we were resolving a case, you read this document and you read it 5 times because it is your life, not mine. I don't know what goes on at home. Like if you want, this armoire and you don't say this today, it's over. But there are so many litigants that have been wronged or have seen this craziness, like your case, that have just decided, you know what, I can figure this out. I mean, Mr.
Mm.
Henry is representing himself. He is being an advocate for that child. I mean, the fact that he went on TikTok and got like 100,000 views,
Mhm.
you know, you have, imagine the roles were reversed in the sense, anyone listening, just imagine a child gets shot, the mom tries to cover it up, or the dad tries to cover it up, and the court's like, well, that was a couple of years ago. You cannot make this up. I have a case that I'm kind of following, and I think I sent you the order yesterday where a judge, there was a pro se litigant, allegedly that was recording the parenting coordinator. Now, a parenting coordinator is, in my opinion, unnecessary
Right.
ever. I would never agree to one. I do think, just for a little caveat, I do think there are some great guardian ad litems that really help the case and really love kids and stuff like
Mhm.
that, and do their job. But the parenting coordinator, this pro se litigant allegedly was like recording the parenting coordinator, and which, I mean, this is Kentucky, we're a one consent state, and she was really advocating for her child on behalf of herself. And the court found out about it. She actually commented on one of my TikToks, a very benign question, and I responded. So my TikTok ended up being an exhibit in her case.
Mhm.
And this parenting coordinator goes on about how, she's quasi judicial. This is Elizabeth Jenkins. Elizabeth McConaughey Jenkins is the parenting coordinator. She mentions my name on the record, which is, this is a woman that commented on TikTok, you know?
Mm.
Um, Obviously, I got word of it and then started following along. But yesterday, I found an order where she is required to immediately remove, what's the exact language? Any postings regarding or referring to the party's minor child. And she cannot make any post regarding or referencing the party's minor child in the future. Wild.
Yeah.
Why? Have you ever seen anything like that?
No. No.
And,
Um,
and just for like frame of reference, like hypothetically, so if she can't post anything about her child, that means that she has to remove all posts. Does she have to go back and remove a post that she did when she was 9 months pregnant? Does she have to remove a post of, her child with an aunt or her child with a relative? What if the child is friends with mom on Facebook and is like, Mommy, why are you deleting all my pictures? Mommy doesn't love me anymore, especially if she's not in contact with the mom, or in minimal
mhm,
contact, and there's
mhm.
alienation going on, and she can never post in the future. Like, in what world is that in a child's best interest?
Well, now that you mention that, I was given a no contact order by the family court judge. Um, and he said, like no contact even on holidays and Mother's Day. So who's the alienator there? And what my child did at the time was contacted me on Snapchat and said, "Mom, I love you." Something to that effect. And I mean, I'm older. I don't know how to use Snapchat. I went to one of my nurse's friends, right? I said, "What do you know about this Snapchat?" I mean, I found this message and it disappeared in like 3 seconds. I don't know how this stuff works. Okay, I still don't. And so she figured it out and she said, "Oh, just say I love you back." Or whatever, so I did. Oh, was that a big mistake in court? They brought that up. Oh my god, they screenshot everything, and even the stepmom had to get involved and sit on the witness stand and explain all whatever to the judge. It was a fiasco. And so when I was on the stand, my lawyer had told me to just say, "My son reached out to me. I had to reach back out, and I didn't know what else to do." And that
Right. And I mean, it is wild what we are doing in the name of best interest of the child. It's like the
right.
road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think the creation of family court came with some good intentions,
Uh-huh.
but it is not working. I mean, this
No.
court is so concerned. Not only can she not post about her child, but she can't post about the case and she can't post about any of the parties in the case. Now, we all have First Amendment
Right.
rights, and also
Yep.
these children, what mother or father is going to not respond when your child says I love you or I miss you
Right.
because of that is the lack of humanity in these situations, and the fact that these judges think that is an appropriate recourse. They don't have the ability to understand what I consider to be common sense, rudimentary
Oh,
concepts of law and rudimentary concepts of just being a human being. But what is it that they are so scared of us talking about? Why do they not want cameras in some courtrooms? Why don't they want recordings? What are they so scared of if what we're saying is crazy or not true? Right?
it's the collusion and the payoffs. I know, and I know at least maybe 2 judges that have been paid off in my case. I'm willing to
Wow.
bet. I'm willing to bet. And the judge was BFFs with the opposing attorney, and so that's how that went. That was already doomed to fail as soon as I walked in there.
You
Um,
know, we talk about public corruption, and that's essentially just using your elected office to make other money, no, or to make financial gains. Which obviously we've got the judge doing a podcast trying to do it for financial gains, in my opinion, or the TikTok judge, or make these relationships. Now,
yeah,
I have never seen any evidence of like direct payoffs or anything. If I ever did, I would report it to, frankly, the FBI, I would imagine,
right.
and the Bar Association. But I do think there is an unhealthy dynamic with a lot of these people. If you're in that small circle and you're constantly getting appointed to a GAL, you're making money, you're paying your mortgage based on these appointments. I think it's problematic, but I do hear that frequently. I mean, and we did have the Cash for Kids scandal in Pennsylvania where
Yeah,
these judges were sending kids to prison for
right.
money.
Luzerne
So when people,
County.
yeah. So when people say a judge would never do that, there are
Oh,
instances of bad behavior by judges on a regular basis. What about, I don't know if you saw my talk about, was it Missouri or Mississippi?
yes.
Um, that judge, I saw that and I'm like, how is that not national news?
Mm.
That should be national news. This judge literally heard 2 kids outside in the hallway saying they didn't want to follow his order. They didn't want to go with mom, yada, yada. And the judge personally took them to detention, which is wild. And talking about briefly, and I know you've got to go, but
That's okay.
civil immunity or judicial immunity is a huge problem.
Uh-huh.
That case in particular, the Court of Appeals was like, "This is so egregious. You do not have you do not have judicial immunity for this behavior. You literally took them to jail yourself, allegedly, and or juvenile detention." But they did what was so interesting to me, and what I think should terrify people, is they said he would have had judicial immunity had he just ordered them to go to juvenile detention for not following his orders. Juveniles in a custody dispute, a judge has judicial immunity according to this Court of Appeals if he sentences them to juvenile detention. I mean, Wild. There has to be some level of accountability,
So
some level.
he physically drove them. So isn't that kidnapping?
I'm not
Could it
familiar with the
be?
laws in that state. I mean, but certainly it is. I would imagine that this case will go to trial and this is a $1 million action.
Oh
And I
yeah.
think I do, there's a lot of hate for lawyers out there within the abolished family court community and or reform family court community. And I hear you, there are problems, but I think what will save the day is some of these trial attorneys that will try these cases and get $1 million judgments like the Colorado case.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you start talking about trial attorneys getting in or class action suits and $1 million judgments, people will pay attention. And you can't blame people in society for not knowing about what's happening if it's not being
Mm-hmm.
discussed about, or if it's not being talked about. Like, no one had any knowledge of this Colorado case. Everyone I've talked to is like, that is horrifying. And then
Mm-hmm.
now that they know, so to know better is to do better. And we'll have to save this one for next time, but just talking about the fact the local media or the media in general ever cover family law cases accurately. It's so rare, so rare.
And I heard they're being paid off too to shut up.
I I am extremely concerned with the state of journalism. I mean, I really do not think, I think we are at like a breaking point with some of this stuff. I can't imagine a scenario in which a judge selfie recording herself during a domestic violence hearing. I mean, let's just think about this. Like, you are going into court to have a judge make an adjudication, and she is pushing buttons and seeing how she looks. Like, is she listening to the
Yeah.
testimony?
Yeah, she's like holding it like this.
It's like she even hits the button at one point that like zooms out, so it's like you get a better view of her and her makeup.
Ew. Oh
And
my
the
God.
local media was like, they were interested, but then there was a judge that was like, "Ah, well, Miss Miller just doesn't understand things, and
Oh,
it's a public record, and we've got to teach. We have a duty to educate the public about what happens here." And I just couldn't believe, and that is a small, small example of some of the stuff that's going on. But I don't know about the I just don't think journalism is what it used to be. I think
no.
they are so afraid of these people. They are so afraid of getting sued, which back in the day, you remember like Peter Jennings, like smoking cigarette. I just like,
Oh
he was
yeah.
such a badass,
Right.
and we'd all watch, but I think we are in a state, and that's why I'm very much considering, getting, I guess, is it a press pass, but just starting to write about some of these issues, because if I don't do it, who else is, you
Right.
know? And I didn't get a law license to um I wanted to be a lawyer because I wanted to help people. I was a public defender. I loved that work. I was a juvenile public defender. It was one of the highlights of my career, my life. It was so rewarding. But we as lawyers have a duty to start representing like the collective, in the sense of talking about what's happening and not being scared of these judges, because there is more of us than there are them, and enough is enough.
Right. Right. Definitely. I can't wait to have you back on again because we're just going to keep going.
Yes, I love it. And thank you so, so much for being just a kind person to talk about these issues with. When I reached out, it's been 2 years and I should have done it sooner. And just thank you.
Oh, I thank you that, we're doing this now, and I can't wait to have you back. And how can people reach you? How do you want to be reached if people have any questions?
So I have a Gmail that I do not check regularly. And I want to be very clear, I cannot help you on your individual case. I am much more looking at like exposing the issues or putting patterns together. But
Mhm.
it's MillerTimeLouisville at Gmail. My Instagram is it's MillerTimeLouisville. And my TikTok is Kentucky Christine. And I am posting regularly about issues, analyzing things. So please email or follow me on TikTok, like, share, get the word out.
Oh, yes, definitely. I think that's how I contacted you was TikTok. That's how
Actually,
I
LinkedIn,
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Yes.
hmm
Yes.
And
Oh,
LinkedIn, I am, I think Blue City Lawyer on LinkedIn. I've got a pretty large following there.
let me see here. I was just on there when I was looking you up again. Yeah, you are um mhm. Yeah, Christine Miller. Christine
Yes,
Miller.
but I think my handle is Blue City Lawyer. So if you go to like www.linkedin, like the back, whatever,
Oh,
it's
gotcha.
yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very, very much. And don't jump off, okay?
Okay.
Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple iTunes, other platforms I don't know about. Feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. I thank you, Attorney Christine Miller. Totally, you'll be back.
Thank you.